Welcome to another episode of Rebel Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Katie.
I'm your other host, Michelle. Welcome back. Today we have a guest, Jill Bodak. She's my osteopath, and I would say my friend as well. Although our relationship is pretty, to that table, but I've known her for quite a while now. And it's interesting because this kind of came about because of a lot of the conversations we have while she's working on my body, right? And so obviously she knows I'm a Gestalt therapist, and even some of the things I'm struggling with and kind of questioning, it's like Jill will extrapolate out to her kind of philosophy and think she's also hearing from other people. Jill's better to speak on this than me, so I'll throw it to her. Welcome, Jill. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. It's an interesting starting point to say that I'm here with a patient, essentially. It's a curious place that I think osteopathy occupies in the realm or under the umbrella of wellness. One of the pros of my job is that from a strict patient therapeutic confidentiality standpoint, it's not quite as hardcore as a relationship with a psychotherapist or a psychologist, where there's very little of the therapist being able to relate to the patient or share of themselves, except for in extremely appropriate mini doses. And in my work, when I'm working with people's bodies, it's definitely not about me, but if people are coming to see me over the course of like 8 or 10 years for chronic illness, we build a relationship that is more friendly and more personal than the psychotherapeutic space kind of legally allows. And that's something that I've been navigating. I've been in clinical practice for 13 years now. So I have some patient friends who I've never seen outside of my office, but who I've been in communication with for a decade about what it means to be well, about what it means to live in a body that's aging and changing and getting hurt and getting better, that's having babies and recovering or getting a diagnosis that's never going to go away. Like all of those things are a part of my relationship with people over time in a slightly less clinical way. So, people are also watching me lose a parent and have a kid and, be late from a daycare drop off. And it's not so veiled. And I think that puts me in an interesting position to really field a lot of conversations about what it means to be well with people, because I can be a person back. I could say like, well, some other guy was in here today who was talking about, and that's not against the rules, that we can have a community conversation about what's happening in my office. It provides interesting information. I see a lot of therapists in my practice for reasons that maybe I have some theories about why the therapists like to come to the osteopaths. I also see a lot of movement professionals, and I see people whose bodies are either in pain or having a problem that they can't solve anywhere else, whose bodies are feeling confusing or scary or mysterious to them. And in that, I have a lot of therapists in my practice, and I also have a lot of movement professionals in my practice, really thoughtful ones, lots of Pilates instructors and rehabilitative movement people. And I really find that there's this sort of polarity between the two offerings, where the therapists all wish that they were Pilates instructors in some way, and the Pilates instructors all wish that they were therapists, because in Pilates land, people are moving their bodies and all of these feelings are happening, memories and grief and past experiences coming out through movement. And then in the psychotherapeutic land, people are processing their mental emotional stuff, and the therapist might be having trouble dealing with the body, like with the pain associated with that psychotherapeutic process or that discussion of grief and how that is jaw pain or headaches or gut problems or your low back being in spasm all the time. And so I feel like I live in my little like clinic space bubble, just like fielding the movement professionals and the therapists and then the average body user, who are all trying to find a way to feel whole, like a complete skill set or level of comfort with being in their human experience as it shows up in moving their bodies or not moving their bodies, or pain or physical symptoms, and in their neural regulation and their hormonal regulation and their digestive regulation and their jaw clenching and their back pain or their like plantar fasciitis. Like that, all of those things are a part of their whole human experience, and they're wanting to be able to be with that with someone without feeling like you have to get sent to this specialist for the foot problem and this specialist for the gut problem and this specialist for your relationship with your mother. And like all of those are fragmented.
Well, I just wanted to
parts.
jump in. Like that feels like such an overlap with Gestalt in terms of it being like
Specifically,
a holistic approach, where it's like, you know, your mind isn't separate from your body, right?
Nope.
Like I feel like we are often working with that connection of like where you are feeling your feelings in your body, where you are holding tension and what that might be like saying, what that might be holding, and actually working with the body, obviously not hands-on like you do, but working with the person's sensation of themselves with us, and us kind of tapping into our own sensation of ourself with that person, and using the body as like a tool that way. Well, I don't want to say using the body because it's like, it's the person, you know, it's like, but reestablishing that connection that gets lost. Because it's like, that's also the thing I would say that you're kind of hitting on, is like helping people connect to themselves more fully. Oftentimes it feels like you're trying to pull away barriers as opposed to create this. It's like, no, you actually were born with a connection, you know, and then it's like all of these things get layered and pushed in between. But yeah, Katie, you want to jump in?
No, I just wanted to reinforce what you were saying. And sometimes I'll talk to clients about it. It's almost like a reawakening. Sometimes I'll use this really silly example of they've been at the gym and they've been working out half of their body, and that's their brain, right? And so they're trying to solve all their problems from their brain. And I get a lot of those types of people. And so I'll say, like, that's great. And that's super useful. Like, we need your brain. Your brain needs to be online for sure, but you've got a body as well. And so in your body is huge amounts of information. And so I'll sort of say, like, if you're just using your brain, it's like you're trying to analyze, but you don't have any data. The data comes from the body, and then you bring your brain online to sort of analyze what you have. So no matter how smart you are, no matter how good at analyzing you are, if you don't have full access to the data, you're going to get really stuck. So I love the overlap, it sounds like, anyway.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree with what you're saying. And I think the curious conversation around people trying to make those links, you know, as a career for people is like, how do you help someone feel something? And I'm curious about that with my hands all the time. And like the osteopathic example is like to pick up a person's arm or leg or head and to know how it's designed to move, and then see how it's actually started moving as a result of the life that person has lived. And so as I'm demonstrating through my hands, it's meant to move this way. And it's a suggestion. It's not an imposition. And the person is having an experience of that suggestion that is giving them some sort of sensory feedback. It's giving them an idea of something that they hadn't considered. And how a person walks or holds their head or swings their arms or clenches their hands. It is, as you know, like in the Gestalt world, it's like how you're sitting, what you're doing as you're telling a story is telling the story of what that means. And the same in osteopathy, it's like how that person moves, and they're like, they're interested in the pain of it, right? It's like, why does my shoulder hurt when I lift up my arm? And I'm interested in, why does your arm think that's how it moves? Like, how did we get here? And so as I'm looking through like the physical layers of that, and after 13 years of doing that, it's like, well, how that arm moves is related to how that person breathes. And how that person breathes is related to that person's nervous system tone. And that person's nervous system tone is related to what's scared them or abandoned them in the last 30 years. And so it's like this shoulder, this pickleball shoulder issue or whatever is like, oh yeah, it's so much more than that. I think it's patient specific And I think it's the same in talk therapy. It's like what a person is able to interface with, as far as like, how much can we really talk about here when the person's like, fix my arm. And you're like, okay, do you want to talk about like why your whole body is in like a complete state of
No.
shock? Or are we just fixing the arm? And so it's like that question, Katie, is like a way of being like, well, how do you get someone interested in wanting to build a new relationship with feeling? And
Well, yeah.
that's also what I'm interested in over on my side of the fence.
It comes up all the time, and there's so much overlap in what you're saying. People will come in and the old way of dealing with trauma was to talk about it and go back in and retell the story or whatever. I often have people who've maybe had negative experiences in therapy before, and they're ready for it. They're ready to just launch into their life story, and I'll often stop them and say, listen, listen, listen. If you want to tell me these things, I'm happy to hear it, but I don't actually need to know your story because I can see you. And so in Gestalt therapy, we're a little bit less interested in the why. Like the why is interesting context, and depending on the client, maybe they want to know that. That's cool. But like, I don't need to know why you experienced trauma to see it in your body. And then if you want to, we can either go back and figure some of that stuff out, heal some of that if you want to, or we can just focus on the way it is still impacting you today and keeping you stuck from being able to live fully. So I think of like being able to use your body fully, right? People are stuck in these patterns that they've needed for survival, and that's why they developed them in the first place. But so I can look at that and say, I can see it. I can see it in the way you're sitting. I can see it in the way you're holding your shoulders. I can see it in the way you're clenched or you're protecting or whatever. So can we get in there and sort of shift those patterns and give you back some autonomy? Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, totally. And like the entry point there is like, okay, if you're sitting on the couch and I'm sitting on the couch, and then you can say, I can see you. And then the invitation to the patient is to be like, feel what you're doing with your shoulders,
Exactly.
feel what you're doing with your spine. And then it's like, what if they can't, like
sometimes they can't.
And that happens all the time. Yeah.
And they're like, I'm fine.
Yeah,
like,
they have no reference point for that.
That's right.
And it's the same with me. I am showing them I don't have to tell them about it. I pick up their arm and they can feel. I'm like, see, it doesn't move.
Right.
But I don't have to say that with words, right? I can do that with touch. And so it's an also interesting way to have that dialogue, the person to have their internal dialogue, right? It's like in one setting, the therapist is like, can you feel what's happening with your shoulder? And the patient is like,
nope.
And then in the touch context, it's like, I'm doing the same thing. I'm feeding their arm back to them and being, you feel this? And they're like, I can't track this. I have no with this. And so it's that interesting therapeutic phenomenon where it's like through words or through touch, you can feed data points in to a person's system that starts to populate, or I use the word pixelate.
Yeah.
Pixelate, improve the granularity with which they can sense and see themselves in space.
Sometimes I think that we potentially have another tool in our tool. Sometimes if people can't, I'll say, listen, I'm going to mirror you back to you. And I'm exaggerating. And just so you know, you look totally normal and fine. It's fine. Like I'm going to make it bigger, right? And I'll sit the way they're sitting. And I'll say, okay, so if I sit like this, what do you feel when you see me? And they're like, oh, you look really tense. I'm like, yeah, can you actually feel that? And they're like, oh, I can. I'm like, right. So I mean, it's finding different ways in. And sometimes talking works, but sometimes, when I say to people, listen, you can tell me your story if you want, but you don't need to. There is this palpable relief that comes off of them. They're like, oh my God, I don't want to. I don't want to have to like retell the story of my trauma or sadness or grief or whatever.
Especially out of context, right? Like it's like, like launch into your whole story. And it's like, well, we're actually in a relationship. It's a therapeutic relationship and it has boundaries, and that's partly why it can exist. I mean, that's partly the whole reason it can exist is the boundaries. But like the idea of, like you were saying, the relationship sort of carries the therapeutic experience. And I think that is also an overlap in your work, Jill, where like I know just from like a felt sense experience, it's like, because you've been touching my body and feeding those signals to my body for so long, it's like slowly my body trusted you, right? And it's like on this deeper level that I couldn't have made my brain tell my body to do. It's like I had to experience it over time of you touching me in a specific way that felt like it met something in me, or like met like a pain or a need or whatever it was, right? And the whole point is like it's you as the practitioner and me, right? And there's something that happens in that connection just as it does in the therapeutic connection.
And that's what I mean about like patient specific, right? Because it's not a single person that I work with that's willing to build that bridge with me. I'm feeding sensation in their process, taking the time to assimilate what they can of that sensation, and then coming back again, and we do it again, and we do it again, and we do it again. And we're building a nonverbal dialogue between a movement suggestion and a felt sense in the patient, right? It's like I'm allowed to continually make suggestions, and in that way, I'm learning. If Michelle is the patient example, it's like I'm learning about Michelle every single time that Michelle gives me permission to make suggestions into her system. And so am I learning about her health history? Totally. Am I learning about her stress level? Totally. Exercise choices? Yes. A hormonal moment? Yes. It's all there. But that's also a permission and an interest. I do think like there's a certain element of curiosity and willingness that the patient has to bring that is, it's either inherent, it's like they are the kind of person that's going to go looking for that to be met in that way, or they're not that kind of person, or it's just like in their developmental life moment, they're not yet at a place. So I'm not totally sure if it's like, you know, people are, if you're one way, this is never going to fly for you. Or if it's like, give it a few years and then you might be able to receive something of what I'm doing here. And on top of that, as clinicians, we still have to meet the people that are never going to feel what it is I'm actually suggesting and just fix their shoulder or just make their back feel better. And we're never going to have that interface that gives them the information and the dialogue between them and me that grows over 10 years and changes the way that they understand themselves. It's just like, you know, working in the public. You're just like, yeah, not everybody's going to have that experience.
Well, there's just so many. I just love everything that you're saying. But so what came up for me, honestly, is the intersectionality between curiosity and consent. If both of those things are there, it's so exciting because there's so much opportunity to explore and heal and whatever else. But then also there's this overlap, I think, with Gestalt, where the being with is the doing sometimes, right? And often, Michelle and I talk about this all the time, like we have a tendency to want to overwork. And it's like you got to hang back and actually just be with the person and meet them where they are. I think you're right. Some people show up and they're ready to work. They're super excited about it. But, you know, I have a lot of people, and I would have been one of those people in the past. I don't have a body. What do you mean? I live totally from my head and I'm completely fine. Always, right? Sometimes people come and they're just so tired. They don't actually want to be there, right? I'll make a joke. It's like sometimes, you know, nobody really comes to see me when their life is going amazingly, right? Like people come to therapists when they're stuck. And so I sometimes find that there's a window in somebody's fatigue and stuckness where they're like, you know, God, I don't know. I've tried everything. It doesn't work. Fine. I'll try this weird witchy bullshit that you're suggesting. Cool. Sure. And then it works. And they're like, oh, hold on.
I live in that territory too, right? I mean, osteopathy is not most people's first choice. It's like by the time people get to me, they're usually like, look, I've done everything else already. And I don't know what you do. And whoever sent me here doesn't know what you do either. And
classic.
And I'm relatively certain it's not going to work. So like, who cares? Whatever. I guess I'll give it a try.
Yeah, totally. That's a very common launching pad for me clinically as well.
Well, and I, you know, Jill, you talking about that development over like time in that relationship and, you know, speaking to it from a patient's perspective, it's like being open and curious to the sensation that you're feeding me. But like, it actually literally does take time for me to go away and like process it. And like, there are definitely times where I felt like, oh, there's so much more here, but like, I can't actually access it right now. Like, you might be inviting it, and I can kind of feel the way in which like you're holding this potential or this kind of like expanse that I could kind of enter into, but it's like I can only get there 10% today, right? And then it's like, you know, over time, it's like eventually that my body and myself is showing up in a different way, and actually it's kind of penetrating more deeply. And I think that's partly why I found it really hard to explain to people why osteopathy has been so helpful. And I think not just the actual practice of it, but like you as a practitioner, like I'm always like, you have to see Jill, like Jill is the person because you're so interested in that intersection and that kind of like deeply held curiosity and knowledge and everything. But it's like you said, it's like, it's a relationship with you, but then it's a relationship with me, and it's emotional, and it just takes time and the willingness. Like, I can want to be there 100%.
Yeah.
And I can't.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, what you're saying is so beautiful, because it's what you're talking about is our relationship with what it means to be a human being. And we have permission as clinicians to sell ourselves as being able to do really inhuman things. I am interfacing with that a lot in the ways that people get services for their bodies. And people will say, well, I've been to my chiropractor every week for 15 years, or I've been to physio already for this, and I got these exercises. And what happens for me in my office is I have to just say, like, hey, I need you to stop for a second. And I just want to clock that it seems to me like you feel like living in a human body is like Lego pieces that you can just rearrange. Like, you could take the blue one and put it on the red one, and then it will stay on the red one until the next time you want to move it over one spot or what. Like, I can't rearrange you. You're not Lego. And that, you know, understanding the organic nature of a human being, that it is a living thing that does change over time, but you cannot stretch your experience away right now, and you cannot strong your experience away right now. And that actually isn't a necessity for people who work with bodies. They don't have to believe that about bodies. You can really go on the internet and be like, I rearrange Lego blocks of bodies. Like, I can crack your neck this way, and then it will line up that way, and your alignment will be perfect forever. And we're allowed to promote, we're allowed to participate in these very, what I think are dangerous and damaging narratives about what the human body is and how it works. And that is sort of like my segue into 13 years of doing this work with bodies. And like, one of the reasons Michelle wanted me on this show is because I have in the last few years really started to find my own shape in the wellness world of like, this is where my beliefs live and my practice and my voice. And here's how I'm going to talk to people about that. And then here's how I'm going to present that, you know, on a website or a podcast or a Instagram post or whatever the heck. And I had to rename my practice Well and Mortal, because
I like that.
I couldn't call it Jill Bodak Osteopathy anymore, because it just felt like it needed to make a statement about what it is we're trying to meet in my office in each human body, which is that what it means to be well is not at odds with being a mortal human being. Human. And I find that the wellness world in particular, I don't mean psychotherapy. I mean like like the optimizers, the data, like the data
hacks.
gatherers, and the biohacks. They're really taking people on a ride in their own belief system that we can outrun aging, illness, pain, decline, death, and dying. And you can sell that. If you can get people to believe that they can outrun one of those things by coming to see you, you can make a lot of money. Use really flashy colors and tight outfits and like really look amazing. But I don't work in that space. Like, I really want to work with, I call them the average body user. It's just like people living in
It's humans.
bodies and their relationship with what they think it means to be well. And that's the conversation that we're having all the time, whether it's through the reason they're coming to see me is like a knee problem.
Mm-hmm.
We're still having a conversation about what it means to be well. And that definition, if you're going to continue to work with me, that definition is going to have to shift to include the fact that you're human, because that's where all the best parts of us are, in our vulnerability, in our capacity to connect, in our capacity to heal and change. They're not in the superhero versions. They're not in the outrunning death versions of ourselves. Those people who are participating in that are fighting such a losing battle, and they're stressed and tired, right? It's like really trying to do the thing and they can't.
But I would also argue, at least from my perspective, that the practitioners who promote that are lying. They're
Of
lying to
course they are.
people. It's not possible, right? Like, it's not, oh my God, I love everything that you're saying, because I would argue that on the therapeutic side or the psychotherapeutic side of things, it's this pathologizing
Yeah.
of what it is to be a human being. So, like, if you're a kid, I work a lot with teenagers, and you come in and you're super anxious and stressed out and scared, people are like, why are you so anxious? Well, I don't know. The climate's on fire. They can't afford to live. Like, they're in the middle of exams. They're also 16, and that's super stressful just inherently. And all the, like, it's not unusual, or there's nothing wrong with you if you experience anxiety. I would argue, living in the world that we like currently find ourselves. And so the work that we do is more like, we're not going to pathologize the fact that you're anxious. However, if your experience of anxiety is so big that you can't live your life, then we're going to look at ways to mitigate or manage the symptoms of that anxiety so that you can go on and live the life that you want. But every life, if you want a rich life, it depends on your objective, I suppose, right? You're going to have grief and sadness and anger and anxiety and stress and all the rest of it. And so for us, the Gestalt definition of really good health is maximum flexibility.
Yeah.
Flexibility and balance. So, like, I can't control what happens to me, but I can practice my own ways of self-support so that when shit comes at me, I can trust my ability to respond authentically.
Yeah.
And then I feel a bit freer. It just sounds very, very similar, or there's an overlap anyway.
Yeah, they're so similar. It's like you're saying, okay, anxiety in a teenager is either something we think we can outrun, make it go away, or it's something we can be in relationship with.
That's right.
And
That's right.
in relationship with has the potential of transforming the experience, and trying to outrun what keeps them stuck. And it's the carrot, it's to hang a carrot, and to send a person on a chase that takes them
that they're going to
away from
fail
their
at.
experience. Of course,
They are guaranteed to fail.
and I will say that there is something about the design of our culture that's the hanging carrot seems actually like something that some people have bought into as a life practice.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say that that's wrong. It's like a one way you could live your life is to chase that carrot until you die, believing that you'll never die. And you will and you hit the ground hard, right? It's just like you just run and feel nothing and hit the ground hard. And I've known and loved people who have lived their lives this way. I can't actually say that I know a better way, or I can't say that it's better. I can just say that's a choice. That is a choice. And it seems to have an experience and an outcome that some people are interested in. And those are not the people that are going to do well working with me, because it's just not a train that I'm willing to get on, to bypass your felt experience and your lived unfolding humanity is something that is available to us. It is being sold to us all the time. And it's not something that's going to happen if anyone's going to spend any significant amount of time in a space with me, and maybe not in a space with Katie, and maybe not in a space with Michelle. And I think that being able to collaborate across disciplines about the shared desire to hold that sort of boundary, that's like, we're going to do work that's connected to something that feels in touch with being human. I think that is rebel everything. I think
Therapy?
that's radical. It is radical, right? It's a
Yeah.
radical container to hold. And I think that it's happening in lots of through different filters, right? Through people's different skill sets, professionally or lived experience. And it's sort of what I aspire to collect in this idea of creating something called Well and Mortal instead of called Jill Bodak's something or other, is like a radical space exploring what it means to be well, that is for fiercely committed to having that be absolutely owned to what it means to be human. The human experience is the wellness experience. The wellness experience is not to outrun or ascend past the human one.
Right.
Yeah.
So authentic, not perfect.
Yeah.
It's not the same thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I mean, what you're almost touching on and sort of saying in a more beautiful way than saying like, you know, being in touch with reality, but it's like oftentimes it's like, especially in Gestalt therapy, it's like we're working with what is, like not what you want it to be, not what you think it is,
or should be.
And it's like what is actually happening? What are you in touch with, right? And that is an ever moving felt experience, and you can't just like pin down forever. I think it's so interesting, all these different overlaps, and I love the idea of like different disciplines speaking to these things in different ways, but it feels like it's like getting to the root of something that feels really rich and vital and potentially very healing for people. It's been healing for me. That's one more thing I would like to say is just like Gestalt therapy met me in a particular way that radically changed who I was. And I would say osteopathy, but Jill specifically met me in a particular way that was sort of radical and shifted my experience. And the fact that they kind of overlapped, I don't think is any coincidence that it worked well for me or that I've like stuck with it, because it's like working at it from these different angles and then me kind of processing and putting it together kind of internally.
Yeah.
Well, and that might be a perfect segue as we're getting sort of to the end of our time together. Is there anything, what do you feel? I mean, you've sort of articulated, Jill, what you think is radical or rebellious. Is there anything else that comes to you when you think of being a rebel in your own life, whether personal or professional life? What do you rebel against?
Well,
or rebel for?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I'm a person who came like hardwired towards this relationship with reality. I didn't do it on purpose. It seems to be like an essential part of the way that I am in myself, is to be in relationship with what this is, what this all means. It's an existential inquiry. And I think for me it's radical to be willing to be in relationship with that in myself and let it unfold into the world in evolving ways. And I look at my own like life path or career trajectory, and I look at different points in my life where I have tried, or not even tried, but like I have allowed different voices or expressions of this thing of just like, what is this that we're doing for my whole life? And to continue to be willing to allow new ways of discussing that to be a part of my work, a part of my parenting, and a part of my partnering, and a part of my community involvement, without sacrificing the vulnerable, sensitive nature of my own existentialism to the mainstream culture, to the culture that wants me to optimize this body and like, you know,
sell quick fixes.
Yeah.
Get it in line.
Fix yourself. Come on. Yeah. Oh, I love it. Well said. Well, thank you for joining us. Yeah. We could speak forever.
I'd love to have you on again. I feel like, there's so many different overlaps. So, I would love to do this again. And I do really appreciate,
Part two.
You taking the time. Yeah. Thank you. I feel like it's been really valuable. And I think like I said, I think your message feels like it could be profound for a lot of people. So like if we can help like you reach literally one more person, like that feels meaningful to me. So thank you.
Thank you. And
So,
thanks for
so
believing
to
in what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
we do,
I
and to
felt
help other
it. Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
So, where can people find you, Jill, if they're looking for you? Hype yourself.
Yeah, the new website is
Ooh,
wellandmortal.com, and that has a little bit about what I'm after with this philosophy. It's a new face to try to pull all the clinical and written and public conversations that I've had about this idea of what it means to be well together in one place. So that's a great place to start. And it has links to my clinical practice, and it has links to some video content and some online learning and updates about in-person stuff that I offer. I would start there.
amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Well, thank you so much. And I always forget to say this, so please like and subscribe for more. And maybe if we twist your arm, we can have you back and maybe do a part 2 and continue the conversation. I would love that.
Absolutely. It's so wonderful to have that sort of collegial respect for one another, doing different things, doing the same things in different ways.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.